with that development.
All right, well, it's been 31 years since democracy, and as South Africa marks Reconciliation Day, we reflect on just how far the country has come in building social cohesion.
And this whole issue's come back again into focus. There's been backlash against AfriForum and Solidarity about their role in shaping US President Donald Trump's stance on South Africa. And there have been various thoughts and perspectives on this across social media and in conversations around the country. So let's tap into our guest's perspective.
Yeah, veteran journalist and author Max du Preez criticizing the groups, accusing them of undermining Reconciliation Day by reopening the wounds of the past. Mr. du Preez, thank you so much for all the time, Max. Appreciate it. Let's just start perhaps with your thoughts on this, because you've called it, and we're titling it, Reversing Reconciliation Efforts. Let's just talk about what you have seen, especially across this year, when one takes a look at the actions of AfriForum and Solidarity.
Yeah, good morning, both of you. I think what is striking is that there is a new solidarity in AfriForum that we've seen in the last just over a year. And the only explanation for that is the phenomenon MAGA and Donald Trump. So you're seeing a whole upsurge of AfriForum's activism and trying to manufacture a new Afrikaner nationalism. I mean, today, in the old days, we would call this Dingaan's Day, the day of the vow, and it's more or less died out apart from very few small little groups in the rural areas over the last 30, 40 years. And suddenly AfriForum and others are trying to revive this as a day to rally Afrikaner nationalism. And it becomes so desperate that they accuse journalists of being paid, journalists who criticize them, and academics who criticize them of being paid by the state. So it is a very unwholesome development, this new growth spurt, and it rides on the back of MAGA.
I will circle back to that, Max, and good morning. It's Iman speaking again, and thank you so much for giving us your time on a public holiday. But we are seeing what we, determined to be an unusually public split amongst Afrikaners, between those who reject the narratives of victimhood and those who embrace them. What do these divisions, these discussions and narratives reveal about Afrikaner identity in 2025? Is this just the natural course of the way things would go? I know you're saying it's catalyzed in part by what's happening through MAGA in the US. But, is this would this always have happened and come to this?
Yeah, I think there's not ever been an Afrikaner opinion. There is no sort of typical Afrikaner. But broadly speaking, there are the organized Afrikaners, and the organized Afrikaners have AfriForum and Solidarity as their king. Flip Base is the king of the Afrikaner tribe in that sense. But the rest of us are not organized. And many of us Afrikaners don't see our Afrikaner identity as our primary identity. We are South Africans first. Some of us even say we're Africans first. Certainly Democrats first, before we get to an ethnic identification. That seems to be, if you watch social media, that seems to have slipped a bit. So AfriForum and Solidarity were formed by people like Flip Base, Dirk Herman, Kali Kriel. They all come from the far right wing before 1994. They all campaigned for the no vote to refuse permission to F.W. de Klerk to negotiate a new democracy. But they got rid of their camouflage and their khaki, and they put on ties and jackets. And they speak a new kind of language, but the message is the same. The message is the same. The message is self-beskikking. They want to govern themselves somehow, but it is not possible under our present constitution, but they peddle in fear. I get on my phone on a weekly basis a WhatsApp or an SMS from AfriForum saying, the ANC is closing down all Afrikaans schools. Join us and we'll fight them. Or, have you struggled to get a job because you're white? Join us because we are fighting this. It's a peddling in fear. Now, having said all this, this would probably not have been successful had the ANC been more effective as a government. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, there is this view that we are on our own because the country is a mess. I mean, look at Madlanga, look at all the corruption, look at all the infrastructure deterioration. And then it becomes easier for the AfriForum to say, listen, we're building a university, and they did. We're building a technicon, yes, and they did. And there was no corruption. And that becomes suddenly very attractive. But I don't think that is a long-term ideological thing. So I think Afrikaners will be divided forever, and that's a good thing. Whenever people in Afrikanerdom say to me, you know, why do you divide Afrikaans? Why can't we stand together? I say to them, do you want all Zulu speakers, all Xhosa speakers to stand as one? And when I look at the Afrikaner right wing, and I say, if all the Zulus stood together, Zuma will be our president. Is that what you want? You know, so it's a nonsense. We're just another tribe here in Africa. We need to make peace with it, and most of us have in our private lives made peace with it.
Because if I understand what you're saying, and just you know, course correct me if I'm wrong, Max, is that we shouldn't seek to identify ourselves within separate collectives in the country, but see ourselves as part of the nation of, well, you know, of South Africa. I mean, I know you talked about Afrikaner nationalism, which is exclusionary, which is selective and exclusive. You're saying that having these collectives can be destructive to nation building and reconciliation if people stay in their camps, essentially.
Yes, I think Samora Machel and others before him have said, for the nation to live, the tribe must die. And I say this to my Afrikaner friends, that our future is as first-class citizens in South Africa with the rest of our nation, not in a little separate camp. It's not in our interest. AfriForum and Solidarity have done immense damage to the image of Afrikaners among the rest of our nation in the last few weeks and months. They keep on saying we did not use the word genocide, but we know that they painted that picture. And by the way, 10 years ago, they did talk about a genocide. They did paint that picture, and they have these radical activism, not only in Washington, but also in other right-wing, among other right-wing parties, to paint the Afrikaner as a victim of genocide and racial laws. And if you ask them, okay, when you got up this morning, which racial laws affected your life? There's well, my uncle's daughter couldn't get a bursary. So that's the kind of nonsense that AfriForum is achieving, and it's bad for all of us. And it was so important that people like these 48 people who stood up and made that statement that we are hated for so much now, stood up and say, ons is nie almal so nie. There are some of us who see ourselves as South Africans first. Our loyalty is to the people of South Africa. If your loyalty is to the people of South Africa, then you do not run to foreign capitals and ask for sanctions.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Max, as the media then, the role we play here becomes so critical. How should responsible media counter these narratives, but also without dismissing what could be genuine fears from some in the Afrikaner community? Because as Iman was saying a little bit earlier, there are pockets in areas, but it's not just isolated to one area or isolated to one race. So How do you think responsible media counters these narratives in today's age?
Yeah, I think that's a very important consideration. How should we do it? First thing, we shouldn't apply censorship. We shouldn't deny people of a voice, even to the far left and to the far right. We should be gentle with people's fears, but we should be harsh on the politicians, on the leaders, when they lie and divide for their own purposes. So I think a healthy debate, I think we should expose, as media, we should expose our country to the people more. The only experience many Afrikaners have of black South Africans is either at home with a domestic worker or on the farm with a worker, or seeing Siya Kolisi on the rugby field. And that was a failing of our entire society. We didn't get to know each other. I think in the cities that's a little bit better. We work together, we live together. But there is still that divide. And I think we should reflect all of us to all of us. And we should be gentle with people who are fearful. But expose them to the true situation. I mean, farm murders, I keep on saying virtually every week, it is an horrific thing. I come from a rural background. I have cousins who live on farms. I'm fearful for their future. But I live in the southern peninsula of Cape Town. And for every single farm attack, there are 10, 15 people dying, children dying in the Cape Flats. We have to keep both those realities in people's minds.
Max, it's really heartening to hear you, share and speak in the way that you are, in a context where these messages have had real impacts from, a foreign policy perspective on South Africa when it comes to the US in particular. And I'm just really interested in your thoughts. We've had so many moments since democracy, and our country is, we're still very much a developmental state, even in the way that our society operates in terms of social cohesion and so on. How would you describe this moment that we are in, when you can see the impact of these types of groups having like a material impact on our economic prospects overseas, especially with regard to America, this engendering and entrenching of this idea of a white genocide and the labeling of certain Afrikaners as refugees, according them refugee status. How fragile a moment do you think we are in, and what will it take to, I don't want to say convince the world, because Donald Trump, I don't think his mind is possible to be changed, even in the face of evidence. But how would you describe this moment that we're in now?
Yeah, it is a tense, there is a fragility. And no, I don't think Trump himself and the madman in his immediate surrounding will ever be convinced that this is a developing democracy, that this is a more open society than the United States. We don't have a president who insults and limits press freedom. In so many ways, we're a better democracy than the United States. But he sees black people, as we saw in the last week. Trump sees black people, and we rubbish and we shitholes, and we dirty, as he called the Somalians and now the Ethiopians and so on. So that horse is bolted. Don't try and convince him. But I think we need to, and I'm part of a project like that, to influence public opinion, just in the United States. And just to say, this is the real South Africa. And again, we're not helped by the overwhelming crime and overwhelming corruption and the mafia state. We're not helped. But I'm saying, as a people, and I make this distinction a lot, as a people, we the people, we are Democrats, we are decent, we are peace-loving, we are freedom-loving. We have some really bad politicians who, which country doesn't? And that's the way we should we should go forward.
Yeah.
And that's my message to fellow Afrikaners also is, our future doesn't lie in Orania. You want to go and live in a dusty little boring town in the Karoo where you can't dance and listen to rock music? No, you don't. You want to live where you are.
Yeah.
Our future is in the warm heart of the rest of our nation. Yeah. And we have ample evidence that if we drop our prejudice and our racism and our bigotry, that we are welcomed in the rest of South African community. And that's what we should engender.
Max, our poll question actually today is in relation to this. We're asking, because it's Reconciliation Day, how far do people think South Africa has gone? We asked whether they feel it's a long way, very little progress, or not at all. Very quickly, in 10 seconds, your thoughts?
No, I would go for a long way. And add, I would go put a 50% on the long way, and then I would add, but don't let us slip it. Don't let it slip now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Max, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day with your family and your community. Appreciate your time this morning. We're 2 clicks away from the 8 o'clock hour.